My guests are in the studio. I have Dr. Akwasi Osei. He's a chief psychiatrist and also the chief executive of the Mental Health Authority. And then Reverend Alexander Kufuor. He's also the chief executive of Changing Minds in Manchester, United Kingdom. Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very fine, thank you. Hope you too are fine.
I'm great myself.
Thank you.
Now, Doc, let me start off with you. When we talk about depression, what are we saying? Is it that somebody is mentally ill? Is it what depression is?
Yeah, thank you very much and good morning to viewers. Depression is a mental illness. It does not mean depression is madness. Very often we tend to confuse the two. If somebody is mentally ill, then he's obviously mad. If he's not mad, then he cannot be mentally ill. So depression is a mental illness. It is a type of mental illness that affects primarily your mood, your ability to enjoy or to express your emotions, your mood. And it's like you feel sad. We can all feel sad at one time or the other. That is normal. But in the case of depression, or what we call clinical depression, you feel sad, you cannot enjoy yourself, you have poor sleep, you have poor appetite, you may be losing weight, everything looks gloomy, everything looks negative. You lose your sense of worth. If it develops up to a certain point, you may even think that any two people you see are talking about you. They may be plotting about you. You might even be watching TV and you think this program is about me. Look at them using me for this program. And then it goes further, you may even hear voices telling you that don't you recognize that you are useless, you are not worth it, go and kill yourself. At that point, you might kill yourself. So depression is like that. But I must say that it is not every time that it may show up clearly as you looking sad.
Because oftentimes the number of people who are depressed are the ones who are always laughing heartily. You see them playful, but inwardly they are depressed.
Precisely. And then this must have gone on for about 2 weeks. As I said, once in a while, we all have reasons to be sad, to be depressed. That is normal. So if it's just 1 day, 2 days, normal. But if it goes on for 2 weeks or more, that is clinical depression. And it needs to be attended to. If it's not attended to, then it has consequences which could include committing suicide.
Let's look at the statistics in Ghana. I mean, globally, we know that about 90 people who commit suicide are depressed. In Ghana, what is the statistics like?
It's equally true. In fact, about 90 to 95% of all people who attempt or commit suicide have mental health problems, mental health illness, but of which about 80 to 85% are from depression. Similar thing happens. What we are also seeing is that, and by the way, let me say that for every 1 case of completed suicide, about 6 to 10 would have attempted and failed.
Okay.
For every 1 case of attempted suicide, about 6 to 10 would have planned but not attempted. And for every 1 case of planned suicide, about 6 to 10 would have thought about it, contemplated. So for every 1 case of completed suicide that comes to our attention, about 300 or more would have thought about it. In fact, could even be up to 1,000 would have thought about it. Now, all these people who don't go ahead and plan or attempt and complete, somewhere along the line, they might go ahead and do it. So what we have, as we've been getting calls from those who are in distress, as we put out our numbers, a lot of them are from socio-economic factors. Challenges, financial distress, my child is in school, I don't have money, I'm jobless, I finished schooling and I'm jobless, my rent, I'm being evicted. All these are issues that become a lot of stress on a person's mind, and at some point in time he gives up. So these are underneath. But some would have gone on for so long that they become depressed as a result of that. So we have depression, we have others who are not that, who may not have pre-existing depression, but on the spur of the moment, that's what we call acute stress reaction, then they may react by attempting or committing suicide. Somebody had an accident or encountered an accident situation in which others died. He did not die. So he imagines that, we call that a post-traumatic stress disorder, and then he feels like committing suicide. So there's a stress reaction from the accident that the person had, acute post-traumatic stress reaction.
Now let's look at our traditional setting. In the past, what we had, Reverend, I'm coming to you. This evolves to you a lot. In the past, what we had is extended family systems. Now we have the smaller sects. In the past, you have your aunties, your uncles, your cousins, everybody in a particular compound. And so if there's an issue, you can walk up to, if you cannot talk to your immediate parents, you can talk to an auntie or a cousin or probably a relation around you. But now what we see is the smaller sects. And so if the child has a problem and then your immediate parents are the busy type, they're on the go type, they are not immediately around, you end up keeping it to yourself. And then we see a lot of young people who we think that are comfortable, are well, their parents are well to do. Why are they killing themselves? Is that also a rising cause?
It is. The point is that very often if somebody, in fact those who leave a suicidal note, and you read the note and you think, but there's no reason why you should have killed yourself. But at that point, it was a problem for the person. You might look at it as trivial, oh, but this is no problem to you. You are from a well-to-do family, why this? We all have challenges, and the issue is our ability to withstand the challenges, to stand up to cope with the stresses of life. At a point where they attempt suicide, their coping skills, coping mechanism has broken down. And so it becomes he sees it as a huge problem. Whereas you, it's no problem. Somebody, you remember about 10 years ago or so, a young man, teenager, actually 18 years, committed, and with due respect, I'm not trying to remind people, but committed suicide, and the suicidal note he left was that he had completed SHS, had 7 A's and 1 B, and to him, that would not take him to the medical school, whereas his colleagues had all 8 A's. Any other person, this is wonderful results, but to him, that was a failure. So what you see as a sense of failure or to give you reason to feel you failed, to somebody else is not. So the point is that everybody has challenges. So you may think that is no challenge, but that's a challenge to him. Somebody describes himself, somebody commits suicide and leaves a note that my friends are laughing at me that I'm short. To many other people, that's no big deal, yes. But to him, that's a big deal. So somebody may even go to school and all my friends are holding the latest iPads, iPhones, and whatnot, and I don't have it. To him, that's a big deal. To other people, what does it matter? So it is how the person perceives as a challenge.
Talking about our coping mechanisms, when we look at our schools right now, we don't have psychologists, we don't have an environment, an enabling environment that accommodates all these. If I have a problem, and most of the time our teachers are not even friendly enough. You live in the UK, you have a different system there, but down here in Ghana, what we see is that even our teachers are not friendly enough, and so if I have an issue, I cannot talk to my teacher, I cannot talk to my parents, and if I talk to my friend, my fear is I'll be laughed at, I'll be mocked, and so I keep it to myself. Now, you are a Reverend Minister. Look, let's look at the church's point of view. What does the church do in support of this?
Well, basically, human beings, we are, first and foremost, we are soul, we are spirit, and we are body. So the church's approach must be a holistic one. And I can talk about my experience from the UK, but the church is a universal body, and therefore the interventionist methods must be universal. The church has to be interested in people, and there must be systems even within the church that supports individuals within the church. My observation of the churches in Ghana, and the reason why I'm saying that, you know, when I was coming to this program, I approached a bishop and said, look, I'm coming to this program, and I feel that the church is a very important institution in society that ought to be taking care of this problem. Now, I would not tell you the response that I had, but my perception of a church, as I see it in Ghana, is that these kind of, I mean, there has to be counselors within the church. There has to be support systems, like if somebody has a need in church, it may be economic need or social need, and you have alluded to the fact that our extended family system has broken down. Now, over there in the developed system, yes, it's a nuclear family system, but there are various social interventionist systems in the schools, in the churches, in society. So effectively, what happens is that the loss of the extended family system, even there, is replaced by social systems, social workers and others who go to families and stuff. So I think the church's role is very, very critical, but I don't see, from my personal perspective, that the Ghanaian church is fulfilling that role.
We have spiritualized everything in Ghana. Somebody is depressed and then they say, oh, mama, yeah. I mean, your mother is behind it, your father, somebody, probably you are in the same environment as in your workplace with, that person is behind it. We have spiritualized everything. Don't you think that's also an underlying factor?
That is a big problem. And my view is that the spiritualization of the problems really is to the advantage of the leaders of a church. And I see a lot of the Ghanaian churches as exploitative institutions. How many churches? I mean, for instance, some time ago I wrote a piece and I said, look, if you look at the church in whole, I think the church is more financially endowed than even the government. Okay, and I was suggesting that within the church you can set up, you know, clothes shops, you can set up food banks, you can set up those kind of things. So some people may not even have food to eat, right?
Even the universities that the churches set up are more expensive than the government.
They are. So what I'm saying is that a church university, if a church is setting up a university, surely it should be subsidizing people. It's the rich people whose children go to these universities. Exactly. And so what I'm saying is that that's not a church university. And so whereas the church should be a critical institution in resolving these problems, in Ghana, I think they're a problem. They're a problem in the sense that I call the churches mega organizations where a lot of these pseudo-pastors, because sometimes they say pastors, and I think it's an abuse to the calling of a true pastor. I think it's high time that we call these pastors false pastors and false prophets. I wrote an article some time ago in the Ghanaian Times I called Exposing the False Practitioners of a True Christian Faith. You have churches that are virtual businesses and the so-called pastors are CEOs. They are chief executives of these churches. And it's high time that these churches are exposed. Of course, there are other churches that are doing their bit. But I think as far as intervening in the pressures that Dr. Kwesi Osei talks about, you know, the depression and so on, it doesn't have to be left to families. You know, the church is a big institution. In Ghana, I can say 70% to 80% of people go to churches. They do go to churches. What practical help does the church offer to people? If I go to church and economically I'm suffering, some people will say, well, I'm not going to church because I don't have an offering to give. When the church should be giving them an offering. When the church should be supporting them. And so I think there should be...
So we have a lot of people who are depressed in churches.
In churches.
They go to church and sing the hallelujahs and all that, yet they are depressed.
They are depressed. And so it becomes cosmetic. You know, and as you say, people are bullying, they are happy and so on. But underneath, and the pastors, you know, you've got to get people within the church who are trained...
We have lost the sense of family in churches. We have lost the sense of family. When we look at a lot of our churches, when it starts small, the pastor can easily interact with everybody. But then when it gets to a particular point, the pastor is distant because the number is growing. And so when you have a problem, you cannot openly discuss with your pastor because your pastor has become distant.
Yeah, but what can happen is that there's a lot of churches where you can create small groups, you know, a group system where you can localize them. Let's say you live in cantonments, and if you have a church like Lighthouse, you have, you know, other small branches, you know, like mini churches, but they call them house groups or whatever. And the house group
like
is
house fellowships.
House fellowships. It's a very critical group because there, I mean, these big churches, people don't even know who is who.
But in these house fellowships, all we go there to do is go there, read the Bible, pray. But I have an issue.
But it's not functional. This is what I'm saying. And Dr. Kwesi said, I like his way of looking at things. You've got to go to the root of the problem. Okay, so if you're in a house group, I mean, let me give you an example, for instance. Over in UK, I tend to, my friends are the beggars on the streets. I'll go to the beggars and I'll ask them, have you eaten? And so on. If they haven't, I'll buy food for them. And then I'll talk to them. And one shot beggar, I spoke to, and we were having a directors meeting. And I said, oh, this guy does this. And one of the directors was a solicitor, and he mentioned the guy by name. But this guy was telling me that he has had tremendous difficulties, and he belonged to his house group. And I thought, goodness gracious, this guy belongs to the house group, and they don't even know about his problems.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact is, it becomes a group, a fellowship that is not sensitized to what, and effectively what happens is that the model in the early church where everybody's need was identified and they cared for everyone and they have everything in common is far off from today's model. Today's model is basically, if we get into a house group, how can you demonstrate who you are and that kind of thing. We clap and go, and we don't even know each other. And I think we've got to go back to that pristine model of the Christian faith. And personally, my analysis of our church in Ghana is that they've gone far off the model that Christ established. So we need to get back to the basis.
Now, you are the CEO of Changing Minds. Let's look at what you are doing in regard to this.
Basically, what we are trying to do is that we find that the problem, of course, of people committing suicide has to be not only publicized and identified, but something practical has to be done about it. Now, the fact of the matter is that you need counselors, specialists in this field, where these individuals, I mean, Dr. Kwesi say, with due respect, has set up a few phone lines where people can ring in, right, and express what is going on in their lives, so that there's a listening ear at the other end. And what we feel should happen is that having identified this problem, you need to put practical solutions in place.
Now, talking about practical solutions, Dr. Kwesi, let me come to you. Do we have these practical solutions in our various hospitals? We only know that about the psychiatric hospitals. Do we have it in our various hospitals, traditional hospitals? Let me put it this way.
Unfortunately, no, and that is a source of concern. It all goes to the point that we are making, that our mental health care in the country has not been good.
It's weak.
It's weak. We have not given proper attention to that. And that's...
Because when we talk about mental health, the person is out on the street and the person is mad. But a lot of people are inwardly mad.
The point is you don't even need to be mad to be mentally ill. I can be here nicely dressed and whatnot. So when I go to my bed, I'm not sleeping. I have all kinds of things, funny feelings on my body. That is mental illness.
But to the Ghanaian, if I'm out there on the street and then I'm walking, I'm talking, then I'm mentally ill. But then people are properly dressed, neatly dressed, who are mentally ill.
That's the point. So that's why we are trying to get the education out there, so that we don't confuse that picture, the stereotype picture of somebody dreadlocked, dirty, unkempt, as the only person who is mentally ill. So if I have any other problem, then I can't go to the psychiatric hospital or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, because I'll be thought of as having gone off.
Exactly.
That is not the issue, the stigma. So what I mean is that we need to, as a whole society, change our attitude towards mental health care. And indeed, not only mental health care, we need to change our attitude towards many things. And in fact, that is where Changing Mind is coming from, so that we can change our perception, our orientation about many things. Coming to mental health in particular, we have recognized all these challenges. The fact that there's so much stigma, the fact that we don't have money, we don't have logistics, we don't have enough human resources to attend to the mentally ill, we don't have enough facilities spread nationwide, and numerous others, medications. So we have the Mental Health Act, which will address all these issues.
Now, talking about the Mental Health Act, it was passed in 2012. What are the impediments in the way? It doesn't have a legal, financial backing.
Laws are passed in two ways or in two steps. So we have the main act, the Mental Health Act, which is very good. It's a state-of-the-art law, worldwide is acclaimed. But what we need to back it, to support it, is the ALI, legislative instrument. In fact, the parent law talks about mental health levy. We need to establish a levy to give the financial wherewithal. And that levy will need to be specified in the ALI. So that is where we are. Until we pass the ALI, that levy cannot be established.
Where are we in passing the levy?
Where we are is that the Minister of Finance is being worked out is at the desk of the Minister of Finance, as at the last regime. So the Minister of Finance will need to look at it and agree and put their signature to that. And then it will be something of substance that can go to Parliament. Then Parliament will then insert it into the ALI, then they pass it. Parliament is ready to pass the ALI. In fact, they can pass it even as it is now. But if they pass it now, it will be toothless because it will not have that financial empowerment. That empowerment will need to come from Minister of Finance to put into the ALI. Now, if we can get that, then we can establish all the facilities. We are trying to integrate mental health care into general care so that wherever you go, whether it's a psychiatric hospital, whether it's general care, wherever, you'll be able to get a mental health person. In fact, the very first person you meet should be able to offer you mental health assistance care, at least first aid. And then if there is a need, he will then forward you to the mental health personnel in that general hospital. These are things that if we can put in place in the next 5 years, that would be wonderful. Then all the patients you see on the streets will then be a thing of the past. Then you will be able to address, as part of it, our issues that push people into mental health and into committing suicide. Talking about suicide, I must say that why are people pushed into that? Those are also socio-economic factors. We need to address all this in totality. I keep saying that far too often, we tend to look at issues in isolation and address them. If you see a tree with the branches, the leaves there, and there's a problem with the tree, and you just pluck a branch and solve it, you've not addressed the issue. The issue goes down the root cause. And that's what we've not been doing as a nation. We are talking about gaps. There are many, many gaps in the society. Many, many gaps. We have institutions that take care of people up to a certain point. Beyond that, that institution does not take care of him. The other institution, closest institution, also leaves a gap. So that gap, who fills it? So we need to address things holistically. In fact, I keep saying that we need to replan the country.
Exactly.
We need to replan the country and look at all the issues and put in structures that will take care of everything, everybody.
And so that is coming in from Dr. Akwesi Osei. He's the Chief Executive of the Mental Health Authority. He's also a Chief Psychiatrist at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. And then Reverend Alexander Kufuor. He's also the Chief Executive of Changing Minds Manchester in the United Kingdom. A special happy birthday going out to you, Mrs. Amodra Jimanga. She's the manager of Faith Community Baptism Complex of Schools inside Medina. You are the wife of our very own Samuel Ajima. We say happy, happy birthday to you. And today is your birthday, Paul Adomo Ochri of Metro TV's Good Evening Ghana. We appreciate you, Paul. We love you so much. Happy, happy birthday going out to you. Thank you for watching today's edition of Good Morning Ghana.